help you remember this better. So in order to go over the understand the end time prophecies, it's a study of end times. It's called eschatology, right? The eschatology is a study of the end. And we typically, I went over this like a year ago when I shared with you guys at when we were still meeting at the church, but I thought it'd be good to review this again. It's important to remember that the eschatology is not only in the books of Daniel and Revelation, but the entire Bible. The entire Bible is littered with all these prophetic things about the past, present, and the future. And Jesus even says it, the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms, it's all about me, right? He said, it's all concerning me. So when you look at the entire Bible, it tells you all these things that are hidden. And in particular, when it comes to the timing of the end times, a lot of people think, most preachers and teachers teach that nobody knows the day or the hour. That's like the most famous line, right? In terms of when it's supposed to be. Nobody's supposed to know. But I believe that's a little misguided, because when you look at it, when you actually study all these verses, you can kind of see that that's not true. And I explain that to you in a little bit. And so if you look at the Synoptic Gospels, you have to understand, in order to understand the end time prophetic timing, you have to understand who the Synoptic Gospels were written to. So when we study the Bible, we always try to understand the cultural context. Who was that epistle written for? It was written for the Jews, it was written for the Romans or Colossians and all this. So we try to understand who the audience is. So it's the same thing with the Gospels. You have to understand who the different Gospels were written to. So everybody knows that book of Matthew was written with the Jews as the audience in mind. The book of Matthew is geared toward the Jews. That's why you got all these genealogies and whatnot, and most scholars agree on that book of Matthew was for the Jews. And Mark, it's not as intuitive, but when you look at book of Mark, it's the shortest gospel. It's like an abbreviated cliff note version of all the other gospels. It's very short. And it's a good book, but it's kind of short. Like it's there, but not. It's not complete almost, And so it's kind of like that. And so the book of Mark, I believe, was written for the sleeping church, the people that don't really follow the Lord. They believe they're saved, but then they're really not, because they don't really follow the Lord. So they're gonna get left behind. So it was written for the left behind church as an audience. This is why it's kind of like short. And book of Luke, written by a physician, very thorough, very complete account of what happened. And it was written with the bride, with the church. The audience is meant for the church. So when you believe everything in the book of Luke, you are a true believer, okay? The book of John, it correlates a lot with Genesis. So it's kind of like, it's like a gospel by itself. So this is why the other three gospels kind of go along together, and then the Gospel of John doesn't, there's some similarities, but then it doesn't flow kind of like the other three gospels, because it's a book by itself, and it applies to everybody. And then there's also in eschatology, there's a debate about, okay, when is the rapture supposed to occur? Is it pre-tribulation rapture, mid-tribulation, or even post-tribulation? And the Bible supports all of those. Why is that? Why is there a inconsistency, or why does it support all three? Because because they're all true, because they're supposed to be all of those raptures. So I believe that pre-trib rapture refers to the church escaping and at first, and then the mid-tribulation rapture refers to the left behind church during the tribulation. There's a mid-tribulation rapture, and then the post-tribulation. I don't know if you could call post-tribulation a rapture, because that's when Jesus will come on Armageddon and set up his millennial kingdom. And so at that time, Jews will fully accept the Messiah, and so all of these different timing of the rapture is correct. And so you have to look at that in mind. So in the same way, I'm going to go over why I think we are actually supposed to know the day or the hour, despite what it says in book of Matthew and Mark. In Matthew, Jesus said, "But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only." And in book of Mark, it says a similar thing, but it adds the angel also in it. Oh, not the angel, even the Son, he says. "But of that day and that hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels which are in heaven, neither the Son, but the Father." So in book of Matthew, it doesn't say the Son, but in book of Mark, it says the Son. So how can you get around this? I mean, Jesus said this. Jesus is a direct quote from Jesus. How can you deny this fact that nobody's supposed to know, not even the Son? So if you understand the audience behind these books, you will understand what Jesus was getting at, because the Matthew was supposed to be for the Jews, right? And so the Jews, will the Jews know when Jesus is coming? No, because they rejected the Messiah, so they're not going to know. What about book of Mark? It says not even the Son. Well, it doesn't say Son of God. He was referring to here, I believe, was the Son of Man, the Son, Jesus, as a human being on earth. He's not supposed to know. If you think about it, who is Jesus? Jesus was there in the beginning. He created the world. He is the creator. He is equal with the Father. And how can he not know? He's the one that has an equal power with the Father. And but when he was here on earth, he didn't know, because he had to give up his deity almost to relinquish his privilege from being in heaven. And only when you're located in heaven, you will know the day or the hour. So I believe that's what it's referring to here. And you may not believe that, because you've been taught the other way for probably all your life. And I used to believe that too. So I'm not saying that you must accept what I'm saying, but I'm just presenting to you the rationale behind why I think it's important for us to study the day or the hour. And in book of Luke, the parallel passage in the Synoptic Gospel, it doesn't say this. It should say this, because the context is the same, but it doesn't. Instead, Jesus says this, that take heed to yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with suffering and drunkenness and cares of this life, and so that they come upon you unawares. So he doesn't say you're not supposed to know the day or the hour. He says you're not supposed to be caught unaware. It's not supposed to be a surprise to you. For as a snare shall it come on all them that dwell on the face of the whole earth. Watch ye therefore and pray always, that ye may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass. He's talking about the rapture, and to stand before the Son of Man. So similarly, Apostle Paul wrote this to the Thessalonians. See what he says here. But of the times and the seasons, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you. He's saying there's no need for me to remind you the times of the seasons, because you already know. For yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. But ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that that day should overtake you as a thief. So most people believe that this notion, the day or the hour, you're not supposed to know, and it's kind of like the thief in the night. It's gonna come upon us like a thief in the night. No, 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 no. That's not what Apostle Paul is saying here. He in fact says the opposite. He says, ye brethren are not in darkness, that day should overtake you as a thief. So it's not supposed to be a thief in the night for the believers. We are supposed to know. We're supposed to know. So here's a little diagram of the timing. How do you study the timing of the end times? Well, you have to understand what in Hebrew term called moedim. Moedim is translated God's appointed time. You have to understand God's appointed times in the Bible. This is the reason why the Old Testament is so important, because God lays out his appointed times through the Sabbath, the weekly Sabbath. So this, what I'm showing you, is kind of like a grandfather clock, clicking. The eschatological, the end time time is ticking, and it's the grandfather clock. The pieces are all moving together, and the weekly Sabbath. It starts with the weekly Sabbath. We're supposed to rest, right, on the Sabbath, and then on a monthly cycle is the new moons. So the Hebrew calendar is based on the new moon. It's a lunar solar calendar technically, but it's mainly based on the new moon every month, and that every month they have festivals, the feast, the seven feasts, right? The seven feasts, which occurs in the spring and the fall mostly, and then it forms into this yearly cycle. Then this moedim, the appointed times, continue with the 7-year cycle called Shimita. Shimita is a 7th year, and then every another 7 weeks of the 7th year forms a jubilee. So 7 times 7 becomes 49, right? And the 50th year is so the end of 49th year is the beginning of jubilee year, the 50th year. So this is how, and then you take the 70 of you multiply the 7 to the jubilee year, and it becomes 490 years. So that is really important, 490 years, because Jesus was crucified on the 483rd year from return of the Jews from the Babylonian captivity, which fulfills there's only 7 years left after 483 plus 7 becomes 490, which fulfills the 7 times the jubilee year. So it tells you that Jesus was crucified on the very year that symbolizes the jubilee and setting people free. So whenever God does something, he does it with his time clock, the moedim, the appointed times. And when you understand the numbers and the years in the Bible, especially in the Old Testament prophecies, everything unfolds. You can see when Jesus is coming back the second time. And so this is a chart of the Shmita year cycle. And you can see, so I'm telling you, everything happens in Shmita 7-year cycles, right? And so here, you can see the years. We're right here. We're going into, so the Hebrew year starts from October. And so, but that's the civil year, but the biblical year starts from March or April. And either way, it's not from January to December, so there's an overlap. So every year is it's like 2 years on the Gregorian calendar. We're right here. We're completing the year 5781 in the Hebrew calendar, which is 2020-21. We're entering into the Shemitah year, the 7th year of 21 and 22. So if you look at this chart, you see all the years, previous years, And they're all happening in Shimita cycles. And right here, this year, guess what happened right here? There was a 7% Dow Jones Industrial, the stock market, there was a crash, 7% crash right here. You know what? There was another 7% crash in the following Shemitah cycle. And then the blood moons have occurred here in 2014 to 2015, again in the 2015, 2016. So the blood moons are really, really, really crucial because God told us to look for signs in the skies for his timing. And so the Shemitah cycle started again. And the Shemitah cycle ends this year. We're entering into the end of the Shmita cycle of this 7-year period, which is this year into 2022. And so if Jesus doesn't come back at this time, we have to wait another Shmita cycle, okay? So this is how it works. This is how it worked in his first coming. This is how everything worked in the past. So in order to help all of us understand this a little better, I put together this diagram. And so Moedim means God's appointed time. So over here, you can see the creation. And here's a fall of man, Adam's sin, and he fell. That occurred around the same age as when Jesus was crucified, believe it or not, some believe. And then 4,000 years from moment of the fall is when Jesus was crucified right here. And right before that, about 30 years before that, or 31 years before that, Jesus was born. And 2,000 years from there, you fast forward from his crucifixion, is the beginning of the millennial reign of Christ, when Jesus, the second coming of Christ, represented by the red arrow. And right before that, whether it's 7 years of tribulation or 14 years, I even thought that, you know, in the past, it could be 300 days. We don't know because we don't know the future. We're not God. We can only look back and figure it out. But I believe it ranges from 1 year to a 14-year period, the tribulation. But right before the tribulation, it's going to be a rapture right here. And then right before that, some 70 to 80 years before that, it's supposed to be the return of the Jews, like fully. I mean, they returned to the land of Canaan, the promised land, from Babylonian captivity right here. But happens again right before. It's like a repetitive thing. So we know that 1948 is the year that the Jewish nation was founded again, and that's a crucial clue. And then again, by the way, over here you can see the rainbow. That's when the Noah's flood occurred around 1600s. And then after 1,000-year millennial reign of Christ, there is a fire. There's a fire, the Bareshiyth fire prophecy. 3,000 years from crucifixion is a fire, the final judgment, the great white throne judgment, where you could also look at it as the beginning of the new earth, new heaven, new earth, and the eternity future. So now I'm going to share with you this chart that contains all the dates. I actually figured out all the dates for you here. So there's different ways to figure these out, but I'm not saying, by the way, I'm not saying this is it. This is the way it's going to happen. And as you can tell, there are a lot of possibilities. So I came up with all these different possibilities, okay, based on my observation of the prophetic timeline, or the Moedim, if you will. So there's a different ways to figure this out. And I went through, so the yellow highlighted ones are the ones that I used as a basis, the starting point of these timelines. So for example, a lot of people believe that Jesus was born in 4 BC. So if you think that, and you add 30 years, that's in the book of Luke, I believe, it says that Jesus started his ministry at about the age of 30. It doesn't say exactly 30, but it says about 30. So I think God is being mysterious on purpose. So people like me can't figure it out exactly. But so there's all kinds of possibility. So there's a 4 BC, you add 30 years, it becomes 26 AD. And according to most people believe that Jesus died 3 years, 3.5 years into his ministry. But as I taught in the previous lessons that I've done on a Friday, I believe that's not true. I believe that he actually had a ministry of exactly 62 weeks as prophesied in book of Daniel before he was cut off, it says in book of Daniel. And so a little over a year and 2.5 months exactly. And so he died on year 27 if you go by the 4 BC birthday. So then you add 2,000 years from that, it becomes 2027, where he's supposed to come, a second coming on Mount of Olives to establish the millennial reign. So if you subtract, if you believe the tribulation is 7 years, according to the book of Daniel, 70th week prophecy, then the tribulation is supposed to have started in 2020, last year. So according to this, we're already in tribulation, which is possible. With the pandemic and everything, we could be in tribulation, which means that pre-tribulation rapture probably isn't true if you believe this, okay? And then the 3,000 years, you add 3,000 to 27, the year of his crucifixion becomes 30,027, the great white throne judgment. And you can go back 4,000 years from crucifixion, and it becomes 3973, which is the year that Adam sinned. Adam and Eve fell, got kicked out of the Garden of Eden, and you add the age of Jesus's death, which is 31 and a half, it becomes the beginning of human history. It began at 4003. So you could apply this to 6 BC and come up with the same numbers here. And I believe nobody really knows exactly when Jesus' birth year is. I mean, they try with the Bethlehem star, with the archaeological finding of the Herod's coin and all of this, but nobody can really, it seems like there's no consensus. And the most common consensus is that Jesus was born between 4 and 6 BC. So then what about here? So some people commonly believe that he was crucified at the year 30 or 33 AD. If you take that into account, you can do the math, which I did for you. This is why there's a range from 2030 to 2033 because of the 3-year here. And then you can all go back and figure this out. But now there's another way to figure this out, because you can glean from the founding of Israel, the Jewish nation, which was founded. The birth of Jewish nation was 1948. And in book of Psalms, it tells you a generation is 70 to 80 years before we fly away, it says exactly the words in book of Psalms. 70 to 80 years is a years of generation before we fly away, like a rapture. That's what it says. And so if you add 70 to 80, you come up with this date, 2018 to 2028. So this is the date. These are the years where the pre-trib rapture could occur at any moment. Then you could trace back Jesus's crucifixion based on these dates, and the second coming, and so on and so forth. Now, I included 1949 because the official first government was formed in 1949, the official first Jewish government, the modern day government. The 1948 was a temporary government. The permanent government began in 1949. So if you count that, it delays the year by 1. So this is what I figured out here. And then in book of Revelation, there's another way to figure this out, because in book of Revelation, chapter 12, it tells you a celestial sign. And I show you, I share this in the past teachings, but book of Revelation, there's a constellation sign where the sun and the moon and the constellation of Virgin is aligned with the constellation Leo, having 12 crowns, but the Leo only has 10 or 9, but where are the other 3? Well, the Venus, Mars, and Mercury lined up together with the constellation Leo, with the sun at the head and moon at the bottom of the feet, Jupiter going in the womb and retrograding for 9 months, mimicking the birth of a child, coming out with the comet coming out. And we, by the way, we sent the probe to this comet, a probe which was named Satan, Lucifer. Isn't that amazing? And this is exactly what Book of Revelation 12 describes. And this has happened only twice in human history, according to computer analysis of astronomical computer analysis. It happened on September 23rd, 2017, and again toward the beginning of creation. It has only happened twice in human history. I think that's a pretty obvious sign from God, you know? And in Book of Revelation 12, when you read it toward the end, this virgin escapes with the child that's born, just like Mary did when they escaped. When Jesus was born, they escaped for 2 years, right, to Egypt, and so they did that for 1,260 days, 1,260 days. Okay. And in book, and at the end of the chapter, it tells you that they sought refuge in the mountains or in the desert for 1,260 days. And if you add 1,260 to this date, it becomes March 6th of this year. Isn't that incredible? March 6th of 2021. So this is where I come up with this possible tribulation, the beginning of tribulation date of March 6th, 2021. Only literally less than a month away. It's amazing. It's really amazing. And then if you add 7 years to that, it becomes 2028. And then the Great White Throne Judgment at 3028. You could all go back to you could date the crucifixion that way. And so that's kind of where I'm at. So here are the references of everything that I shared today. This eSword is it's a free app. You can log on and download to your computer or your mobile device and read the Bible, and you can look up the original words, and you can do a lot of different things there. I highly encourage it. And then this is another free Bible, online Bible, blueletterbible.org, and you can look up the original words, a lot of Bible resources there. Here's another one there's a new one that I came across with, esm.us, El Shaddai Ministry. They show you a lot of the Old Testament, the Jewish, the Torah link of the Messiah. And there's a book by C.J. Lovick, Bareshiyth, Passover Prophecy, published by Rock Island Books. If you want to you could actually look him up on the YouTube and you'll see this. And then one of my favorite teachers, Pastor Chicolati from Australia. But anyways, that's all I got for today. I'm gonna let's open it up for discussion.